SMPS Connecticut and industry friends to our Prospering in a Virtual Environment webinar today with Courtney Kearney. And it's going to be a very exciting webinar about how to, instead of surviving, just really learn how to prosper and really embrace this new normal. So I first would like to start by thanking, let me introduce myself. I'm Nicole Peterson. I am the current SMPS Connecticut president, and I'm the director of marketing for Flowtech Inc. And I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. So Courtney, if you want to advance to the sponsor slides. Of course, I'd love to thank our 2019-2020 annual sponsors. You can see all their fabulous logos there. They've been a tremendous help to us this year and help support us with our various initiatives. We can use the money that they provide us at the beginning of the year for excellent programming, speakers, mentorship programs, all of our fabulous things that we offer our members. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to today's webinar sponsor, which is Gilbane. So thank you very much for sponsoring today's webinar. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney Kearney. She is I know that she says that she's a mom and data-loving marketer, but she is also with C. Kearney Consulting, or CKC. So Courtney, I'm going to give it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for calling in. I know a lot of us are webinared out, so I do appreciate you spending the next hour with us in the Connecticut chapter. It is going to be very interactive today. We're going to discuss logistics after I share my bio a little bit. So I am Courtney Kearney, founder and owner of C. Kearney Consulting. I have been in the AEC industry all of my life. I was born into this industry, unlike some who slipped and tripped and fell and found themselves here. I'm here on purpose. My dad was a project manager, and I grew up going to the job site, and I love the built community. I absolutely have loved watching all of the projects that my dad was a part of. Now, when I was little, I like to say that my dad built that as if he built a hospital single-handedly. It's funny now that my kids are aware of what we do in our industry. They pass buildings in downtown Dallas and say, my Papa Brad built that. So it just really is exciting for me to be a part of this industry. I am a wife, mom, and data-loving marketer. Being a wife and a mom sometimes is controversial because a male might not introduce himself that way, but it is part of who I am and my makeup. So I own it, and we'll talk about that piece of who I am in this presentation today. I did start using CRM systems in 8th grade. I did my first internship at a construction company, and they stuck me in a closet and said, you know how to type? So they gave me these big binders full of information, and I sat literally in a closet with a giant PC and typed and typed and typed. Now, fast forward through middle school and high school and into college, and I came back to work to that firm after graduating college, and I recognized the data. It was in their CRM systems. Little did I know that everything that I was typing then would turn into a CRM system that I would use as a marketer years later. I'm a Texas girl, born and raised. I'm in the DFW area in Texas, and I am a past president of the SMPS Fort Worth chapter. I'm also a Fightin' Texas Aggie class of 2006. A little bit of logistics and housekeeping. If my picture or video feed is taking up too much of your screen and you're having trouble seeing the slides, feel free to exit this full screen mode, and it should push my video up to the top or the side. In the options in the toolbar, you also have an option to do side-by-side mode, which would push the video feed off to one side and then reconfigure the slides for you. This webinar is meant to share insights, tips, best practices, but we want it to be very interactive, or as interactive as we can virtually. To do this, we're going to use some features of the webinar platform. We're going to be using polling. All you have to do is simply vote once I launch the poll. We are going to ask some open-ended questions. So to respond to those, you have 3 options. One, you can use the chat feature, which some of you have already participated in. Now, the chat feature is private, so only those messages are seen by Nicole and myself. If you want to use the Q&A, that feature is public. So if you type a question there, Nicole and I will see it and address it, but also the rest of the attendees will also see it. If you'd like to be unmiked and ask your question live or give your feedback or examples, then simply raise your hand and we will unmic you. Now in the center of your toolbar, you should be able to see a raise your hand icon. I want to address that things shared in here can be both beneficial personally as well as professionally. They can be applied individually or as a team or department. I say that because I fully acknowledge that some of the things I'm going to share today are from a small business perspective. I own a business and we have a team that fluctuates between 6 and 10 of us, depending on the workload. I don't have the red tape that a lot of you have. I am not a big corporation that needs to get approval from many different levels of the hierarchy. So it's really easy for me to implement change, and I understand that that might not be the case for you. However, you can implement change individually, or if you are a manager, on your team. So really keeping that in mind as we talk about some of the things today. That said, I have run a business for 4 years that is 100% virtual, and all of the employees have been remote and work from home. We seem to be thriving and prospering, so I wanted to bring some of those tips into the conversation today. That leads us to our first poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. You should see it shortly. The question is, what's your current working status? This is multiple choice because I know sometimes we're going back and forth depending on what's happening locally. So is it business as usual? Things have never changed. You've never left the office. Majority are back with a few work from home. There's a hybrid of some in the office, some work from home, or you might be a hybrid yourself. I know Nicole goes into the office a couple of days of the week. We all have the personal choice, or we're not returning to the office in 2020. I'm glad to see that no one is business as usual and that things have never changed. That's a good one. All right, it looks like we're at 85% participation. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Fantastic, thank you for participating. I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. So we are at 25% majority back in the office, 45% is a hybrid, 20% it's a personal choice, and 10% we're not returning to the office. That's a great diverse audience, which is good, but that indicates to me that everybody on the call has worked from home at some point in the past couple months. Now, you might have experienced work from home prior to COVID, but for now, we're going to focus on the life that we are in for COVID. All right, let's move this over here. Did that get past the polls for you, Nicole, or do you still see the polls?
Nope, I see exempt right now on the screen.
So I do want to acknowledge that we are an exempt industry. So your firm might have continued to work, your people out in the field might have continued to work. Now, with that said, a lot of us in the marketing industry or business development headed home because we aren't, although our industry is vital and critical and got exempt from the stay-at-home, a lot of us could work from home. So when that announcement was made, you might have been excited. Yes, I get to work from home. I've wanted to do this, but our industry has fought the idea of working from home for so long. I'm going to get so much done. I'm going to be productive. No one's going to interrupt me while I'm doing my proposals or writing my narratives or working on the website. I'm going to be fantastic. I'm so excited. I'm going to head home. Now, if you're like me, this is what I was pre-COVID. I had a great setup in my office. Like I said, I've worked from home for 4 years. I had my jam and it was going good. And then reality hit and it looked something like this. You just want to find any open surface that you can work from. You've got kiddos or fur babies running around. You might have a spouse or a significant other or roommates that are also trying to find places to work and have conversations. So we have to acknowledge that working from home is very different in the environment that we're living in now versus what it was pre-March, pre-COVID. So with that, I'm going to share some examples, both personally and professionally. With the reality of my kiddos being home, I also have the benefit of having a husband who is an ER nurse and works nights. This never impacted our schedule before because our children were in school. Now that our children are home, I have to keep them and the dog quiet all day because he sleeps all day. This has raised my stress level infinitely, as you can imagine, because I still have a business to run and meetings to have and try somehow to keep things quiet and staying out beyond my door. I also have an autoimmune condition and had to social distance in my own home because my husband was experiencing or caring for positive patients. So this room that you see, this was my bedroom, my life, my office, my everything for 2 months. Now, I usually have a screen up behind me that I can do virtual backgrounds or just white out my background. But for this presentation today, I wanted to keep it real and keep it reality. So this is the guest bedroom. I finally moved back into our bedroom. I said enough is enough. If I get it, I get it. I just needed my own bed back after 2 months. We are moving. We close on the house tomorrow, hence the boxes. With this new reality, it has brought people's home life to your professional setting. I can't ignore that I have done webinars and speaking gigs and my 6-year-old runs in with a bloody hand because she slipped. I can't ignore that. Now, if I was out at an SMPS presentation and we were doing this live, I wouldn't have my 6-year-old running up, but this is the reality that we're in. So from that perspective, I'm going to share a little bit about our work from home reality as a team. So you'll see my team on the left. Heather's in the upper left. She's got 3 boys that are hiding behind that camera. So she has this little itty bitty section of the kitchen that she takes over during nap time. And Danielle is in the upper right, and she's got fur babies running around at her feet. Valerie just lets her fur babies sit in her lap. She just owns it. And Rebecca down at the bottom left has 2 small kiddos who she set up as their own workspace so that they can work when mommy works. So you can see in the picture, she's got her own little laptop and her headphones so that mommy can get things done while she does. Now, I had to turn into a kindergarten teacher and a 5th grade teacher. So I had 3 levels of schooling going on. So my oldest is sitting on the floor with her computer doing her 5th grade work. The kindergartner is in the middle practicing her S's and her handwriting. And then I'm working at the top level. You make it work. We got through it. We got through the school year. Sweet Lord, please let the schools open in a month. That's a whole nother topic. And the other thing I stumbled upon was the idea of when daddy is awake, you can ask him things. So we created this candle that says, when lit, go ask your dad, so that I could get things done, that I could be somewhat productive without the constant interruptions. The other tip that I highly suggest, and no, I do not get paid by Amazon to say this. This little guy is my secret weapon. So if you have an Alexa Dot, she is in every room of our house. Yes, even the bathrooms. This is because I use the power of dropping in. So I'm going to say A from now on for this slide because she's going to activate because she's sitting on my desk. And yes, we do say she's a part of our family. So when I hear my children's volume raising and they're in the living room, I cannot end a webinar or stop what I'm doing to go out and tell them to be quiet. However, I can mute myself, ask A to drop into the living room and tell them, please be quiet. And then the volume is done and I never left my seat. Or if they are in the bathroom, splashing around in the bathtub, making too much noise, or hey, it's time to get out, I can drop into their bathroom. It has become kind of a second mom because she also reminds them of when to do things. So we have a schedule for our schooling, and it would wake them up in the morning and say, rise and shine, it's time to get up. Please get your laptop plugged in. Please get your iPads. Get ready for your school day. They would eat breakfast, and then it would remind them, okay, it's time to do such and such session. And then we did 20-minute intervals, and she reminded them, because I'm working, I don't have the opportunity to go out there every 20 minutes and change the schedule. Now, that's on the personal side. That's also being a mom. I fully recognize that. Now, as just an individual, I use it for other reminders, like eat lunch. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I am one of those people that when I get focused, I lose all track of time, and all of a sudden I realize that I've worked until 5 a.m. Now, that's probably not normal, but if you are one of those persons that get involved in a proposal and you look up and you're like, oh no, I didn't eat lunch, now it's 5 o'clock. The other thing is, working from home, you tend to sit a whole lot and might not get up. So I have her remind me to drink water to keep up my hydration. And then to stop working. Working from home also means you don't leave work. We're all trapped inside of our homes. We're all quarantined, right? So there is a temptation to work. Hey, I'm bored, or I'm Netflixed out, or I, really just, if I got that one thing done, I would be able to sleep better. Reminding yourself to stop working, or hey, it's 8 o'clock at night, it's better if you take a break. Having that reminder is helpful, or can be helpful. And the last thing is, I do have to admit that we don't leave home without her. I travel with her. She is my routine in the morning. So when I'm getting ready, I ask her what the weather is or what the news is. And it's just part of our routine. Anytime we go out of town to visit our grandparents, our kids take it because that is their nightlight. It is their go to bed routine for listening to their meditation and all of that. So she does travel with us. That is just a little plug for how that is my secret weapon to be able to multitask in this world that we're living in. Now for the next poll. We're going to go ahead and launch. What is your situation with others in your home? Is it just you yourself? Do you have fur babies? Do you have roommates or a roommate? Do you have a spouse, a significant other? Are your children home? Or are you in another situation where maybe your parents live with you, or a sibling? This one is multiple choice, so it might be several of these. All right, we're at 80%. I will give us another second. Fantastic. Thank you so much for participating. I'm going to go ahead and end it and launch the results. So it looks like there's a lot of us with significant others. And man, this time has either made your relationship stronger or pointed out areas that we can improve on our relationship. 39% have kiddos. It's fun to see that 33 have fur babies. And man, can they be needy, or like my little puppy likes to sleep on my arm as I'm typing if I'm out on the couch. Just you, yourself, and I, the 28%. Man, I feel for you and would love to hear any sort of tips or tricks that you're having to not go stir crazy being alone in quarantine. Fantastic. Thank you for participating. So the reality is, the toll of the situation that we've been in since, for some of us, early March, it takes a cost, it takes a toll on our bodies. Research has showed that our adrenaline and our dopamine cannot stay at heightened levels of survival, just making it work, living hour by hour. It takes a toll, and we cannot sustain that. So the next question that I have for you is about your mental status. How do you feel like you're doing right now from an emotional or mental standpoint? Are you in a great place and you're thriving? If that's you, I hope that you're going to share a lot when we open up ended questions. I'm getting back and I'm finding my new norm. I'm in survival mode, but man, I want to be prospering. Or I'm barely surviving and seeing no way out. And I'll admit that I have been across the board over this COVID situation. I think, Nicole, when you and I had one of our calls about this webinar, I was in the barely surviving with my illness, and then also was on the couch and just said, I have to be out here because I cannot be in that room any longer.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel for those people. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. It looks like we've got 86. %are thriving. Fantastic. I definitely want to hear from you when we open up the open-ended questions. 74% getting back to normal, finding a new norm. Fantastic. 16% in survival mode and just want to be prospering. Hopefully you get a lot of good tips and direction out of the next steps that we're going to discuss. How do you know you're in survival mode? Here are 6 questions or signs that you are in that survival mode. This constant feeling of overwhelm. Now, as an AEC marketer, I think that there's a certain amount of overwhelm that we always work with or work under. So this is above and beyond that. This is when you're thinking about big picture, it causes panic, or you're just working hour by hour or task by task. There's little to no joy. You wake up and go, it's just another day, and it's going to be an day or a terrible day. And having a great day is, I can't even imagine that. Panic is just a heartbeat away. You feel like your breathing is shallow. You can't drop your shoulders. You're clenching your jaw. You don't realize that you're not breathing until someone says, man, just take a deep breath, and you realize, oh, I haven't been doing that. At times your heartbeat might feel erratic. Calming yourself down just doesn't seem to work. It seems to come right back. Lack of focus, man, I've suffered from this too. Developing that you're doing a bunch of things but not finishing any of them, or jumping from task to task. Sleep is disrupted. You just want nothing more than a good night's sleep but can't seem to get it. Reactionary is good enough. You seem to be not able to be proactive with anything. You're reacting instead of being proactive, and you never feel ahead. Now, if one, let alone all of these rings true for you, then I definitely challenge you to take control and to start to prosper again. And how do you do that? How do you take steps to shift from surviving to thriving? So I've narrowed it down to 4 steps. You've got to first accept the situation that you're in, be positive, think big picture, and then prosper. Let's talk about step 1. If you can find the peace and clarity to accept where you are, you will soon have the insight to get where you'd like to go. Accepting is admitting that things have changed. Life as we know it is not coming back. So continuing to try to pull that back with us is wearing us out. It's wearing us thin. Instead, let go of what used to be and let's move forward. Let's find a new way to work, to thrive, to prosper. I love how Simon Sinek shared his thoughts on this. So instead of quoting him, I'm just going to let him share his thoughts.
So one of the things that most of us live 70 to 80 years old. Imagine if we lived for 1,000 years. This would be like the 6th or 7th pandemic that we faced in our lives. We know it's going to hurt. But we know it's going to be over, and we know there's going to be pain, and we know how to prepare for it. So what an infinite mindset provides is it helps you see what we're going through now, not as the end, but rather just part of the journey. Like it's hard and it's difficult, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're in darkness, but we know this comes to an end. We also know that life will not be the same afterwards. This is like World War II. It's like the way life was before World War II is not what life was like after World War II. The way that life was before this pandemic will not be what it's going to be. When we talk about going back to normal, there is no going back to normal. Yeah. As a friend of mine called it the other day, which I like, we're going back to abnormal.
Yeah.
It will be different. We don't really know how. But this is, what's really important to remember is this is not without precedence, which is we have gone through things before that have shaken the business world, sometimes forcing companies out of business. What do you think the internet did? I mean, the internet, put a lot of companies out of business who couldn't adapt to a new business, to the new change, and it created new businesses. And some businesses were forced to adjust, some proactively and did very well, some defensively, and they're still trying to figure it out. Streaming put all video stores out of business. Didn't have to, but it did. Starbucks, when Starbucks would come into a neighborhood, people would complain that Starbucks would put mom and pop coffee shops out of business. Actually, the data shows the opposite, that when Starbucks moved into a neighborhood, mom and pop coffee shops actually did better because it brought customers and people had a groundswell for the local business. The ones that went out of business were the ones that couldn't adapt. They still had that old ripped up couch because they had a monopoly on coffee shops. And when Starbucks came in with nice clean stores, they simply complained about Starbucks and they went out of business. It's like taxis complaining about Uber. An app doesn't put you out of business. You can have an app to hail a taxi. It's because you have you have to adapt for the changing times, for new technologies, new companies, new competition, new ways of doing business. If you don't adapt, you die. Now, that's not universal. Some companies, like video stores, some companies, this is just too much to bear, and there's very little we can do. But to think of this in terms of what skill sets do we have, what is our why, and how else can we bring that to life, this is way more sudden than the internet. It's way more shocking. It's way more unnerving, but it's not new in business. We know how to do this. I read I'll tell you two stories. There's a restaurant in New York City called Res Dora. It's a pasta restaurant. It's a relatively new restaurant. It's only been open about 9 months, so they're still they're still making a name for themselves. And of course, when New York City issued the order that restaurants could only be 50%, these guys saw the writing on the wall. They could see that this is going to get worse. So they immediately started to adapt their company. So instead of firing all the waiters, saying, well, we don't need waiters anymore, they changed everybody's job. So all those same waiters are now packaging food and organizing online orders and call-in orders, which, by the way, they had to develop. This is a high-end restaurant. They didn't deliver food. They had to immediately figure out how to do that. But the point is everybody kept their job because they changed their jobs. So just as the company had to adapt, the people had to adapt as well. The people who said, well, I'm only a waiter, well, I got no job for you. And so what we're experiencing even in our own company, which is we're forced to adapt. We do live events. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So if I have somebody on my team going, I'm only going to do live events, well, I got none for you.
Right.
So we have to adapt as individuals as much as we have to adapt as companies. I tell you of another pizzeria in Chicago. Of course, 70% of their money came in from selling slices. Well, that's done. Not sustainable. So what they recognized is they have assets. They have resources. They have a pizza oven. And so what they did is they started ordering medical grade, industrial grade plastic that their oven was hot enough to heat. And they started making face shields to sell to hospitals. So they're using their pizza oven to make face shields because they can get the oven hot enough to melt the plastic. I mean, genius. Now, when this is all over, they may go back to selling pizzas or they may have two businesses. So
I just love that guy. I shared the link in the chat window. If you had trouble watching that, maybe you don't have the bandwidth to have it be a good quality, or you want to share it with your team or others, that link is in the chat window. So from a business standpoint, I'm in a CEO cohort, and we've been talking about what is going to make us successful. How will we know businesses that will make or break during this? What we've narrowed it down to is agility. If you are agile to change and can shift and pivot, then you will be successful as a business. I love that Simon shared pizza oven to face mask. How are you helping your clients to see that? So I know the hospitality industry has been hit hard. If that's an industry that you guys serve, are you helping your hospitality clients think about shifting? How else can they be using their hotels? I know that one of the hotel chains in our area here in DFW opened up their rooms at a very big discount, almost free, to medical workers so that they wouldn't go home and expose their families, but rather had a place to stay. That is changing. That is being agile. That's changing your structure or how you are using your assets. I think we are called to help our clients to do this. I know that some of the elementary schools changed how they were using their buildings. Now, that might be changing here in the next month, but some of them turned into clinics because they had the space and no one was in their facilities. Looking at the personal side, how can you be successful through this? And it's about adapting to the change. The waiter who said, I don't care, I just need a job, I'll pack, I'll take online orders, I'll take phone orders. For us in marketing, hey, I didn't used to manage the website, let me help. I didn't used to do SOQs, or I didn't used to help with the pre-bids or the estimating department. How else can you help if you have the bandwidth? Some of us are drowning in proposals, and I understand that, and we don't have the bandwidth to ask for more. But being able and open to adapting to whatever those needs are. The next step is really about acknowledgement, or this step, excuse me, the first step is about accepting an acknowledgement. So I want to open it up for the first time and ask, what are some examples that you guys have? Now you can put it into the chat window where Nicole and I can share that on your behalf. You can drop it into the Q&A, or you can click the raise your hand and we will open your mic for you and you can share. So sharing about how you've accepted or acknowledged, how your business has been agile, or how you have personally adapted. We want this to be interactive, so definitely share. I know some of you have had changes in your offices, whether it's physical changes of you're going to a hotel type style where you're sharing spaces with others because people are rotating days. You've helped your clients be agile.
Courtney, this is Nicole, and one thing that Flowtech has done was when the pandemic first, happened and everybody had to stay at home. One of the guys was the only guy working here, our controller, so he was in charge of doing like all the mail and deliveries and all the office stuff, including watering my plants, because we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and then that turned into like 2 months. And then he raised his hand and he's like, okay, I can't do this. So then what we did is we came up with a schedule where a couple of volunteers, everybody has a day of the week where they come in and they help do those duties. And I water my plants. So that's why I'm in today, aside from the webinar, but to help out with office duties. So that's one way that Flowtech has been kind of managing and adapting.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Anybody else? All right, we've got some other open-ended questions in here, so definitely be sharing.
Oh, we have somebody, Nicole Peterson, because you guys are all signed in as me. So sorry about that. But this person says that I've adapted my schedule to work when I feel the flow. Sometimes I feel unfocused in the afternoon, but we'll get into a good flow around 4 p.m. and we'll go until 7 p.m. When I do this, I make sure to spend the time with my spouse. Yeah, I think that's really good. That's something that I've been doing too. Like before childcare was back in my life, I would go for like an 11 o'clock in the morning walk with my son, and it just kind of like broke it up. It got me out of my little dungeon office. So I think that's a good point. Work when you feel the flow, not force yourself to get into something.
That's great. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And because we all are Nicole Peterson, if you want to drop your name in when you drop something in the chat or the Q&A section, feel free. You can still raise your hand even though you're all listed as Nicole because we can see it on our end. Another just shared, we realized we weren't going to get the exposure to our clients via trade shows. So we have decided to mail our clients care packages as a way to remind them that we care and gain that visibility. Thank you so much, Sam. That's fantastic. I love that idea. Oh, Nicole, thank you for sharing the one about flow. Nicole Medina. I love to hear the care packages idea. We've got several others coming in the next couple slides about how to care for your team and your clients. All right, any other examples? Perfect. So step 2, being positive, stopping the negative self-talk, minimizing unfavorable gossip or side discussions if you are in the office or on a chat platform. Start and finish your day with 3 gratitudes. That really does help raise your positivity. Deliberately bring positivity into your day, and here's some examples of how to do that. One of my clients scheduled TIFF treats to be delivered to all of the employees on a specific day at a specific time so that everybody got the warm cookies in the afternoon. Sending handwritten cards is a big deal right now, just to give that personal touch of, I took the time to do this, and now you have something tangible to read to know that we care about you as a person or a client. This is one that's been fun for us. My kids had a trivia app called Kahoot, and it was big in the education realm. It is an app that you put on your phone, and then we would sign in as a family. My family is spread across the US, so we would have a Zoom every week, and we would launch the trivia on the screen, and then we would all vote or answer on our phones. Well, it's meant for kids, so our entire family, even the kiddos, could help or participate because it's color coordinated and they could see the answer. Now, I adapted this for our team and did company trivia or team trivia, which was really fun. Again, that's called Kahoot for those that wanted to know that one. And then dance parties. Now, this is probably going to be a lot of pushback depending on how your team is, but if you yourself are feeling down and want to uplift your spirits, telling the dot to put on some music and just dancing it out really relieves stress because you're getting your blood flowing and you're having a good time and keeping it lighthearted. We did have another person share, so I want to definitely share that. My buy-in was responsive to the perceived permanence of the temporary changes. Do I need to adapt or can I write it out? Some things required acceptance and then adaptation. Others are still in a state of flux. There's no real clarity on things will settle out yet. That is super hard if you are in a what are we doing state. I think as marketers, we want to really grab a hold of the communication for our firms and make sure that there is clarity. We're going to talk about communication in a couple slides, but for sure, accepting that we're not going to go back to what we were anytime soon. I mentioned that my husband's in the medical field. We are only looking at longer periods, especially as we go into flu season. So really looking at that acceptance of this isn't just temporary anymore. And I think firms need to acknowledge that as well. Thank you for sharing that in the chat window. Step 3 is to think big picture. Really looking at making plans, setting goals again. wrapping your head around, we're halfway through the year. What were our marketing objectives back in January? Do we need to change those? Do we need to modify them? Are we on target? Really getting back to strategizing and saying, we're going to take control and move forward and set goals and not just be in this standstill or this frozen state. Greg Gray has a great quote that says, put your strategy in pencil and your goals in pen. Now, for marketing terms, I like to change that a little bit and say, put your plans or your strategy in Post-it notes and put your goals in ink or down on paper. Really looking at handling uncertainty and knowing the analytics, analyzing where we're at, where are we going, what goals need to change, what markets do we maybe need to get into or out of, what geographic locations are thriving. Looking at the analytics of our industry, I am doing a webinar for SMPS Houston on Thursday, July 23rd, 10 to 11 Central about industry analysis and how to go about doing that for your company and the importance of that. So if you do want that information, head out to the SMPS Houston chapter. So opening the mic, thinking big, how are you staying positive? How are you addressing your marketing goals or your company goals and objectives? What are you guys doing to maintain both of these or get back to some of these? Again, click raise hand in your toolbar and we can unmic you. You can drop it into the Q&A or into the chat window. We're marketers and communicators. I know we are not a quiet bunch. Yes, I can repeat the question. So how are you staying positive? How are you thinking big and setting your goals or reshaping your goals? What are some examples of ways that you've kept your team or your company positive? Or how you've addressed your goals and getting back to thinking big picture and being strategic. Nicole Mendina, I struggle to get my firm leadership to sit down with me to strategize and create SMART goals. Any tips? Yes. So my first question would be, did you have any to begin with? Did you have some that you created back in January or maybe December of last year, or when you did some strategic planning? If you did, pull those back out and request a meeting to say, we need to do a check-in. Where are we at? Where are we headed? Where are we going? If you don't have a goal, you don't have an endpoint. You don't know where you're headed, and you need to grab a hold of that. So that would be my first tip, is to pull it out and say, we need to check in. Oh. The attitude is we don't want to strategize at all. We want to, our goal is to get to work. Focus on what we can do instead of what we can't. Nicole, I wonder if you just sent that to all attendees. I wonder if that was you. Focus on what you can do instead of what you can't.
No, that wasn't me.
Okay. Yeah, so if the goal is to get back to work, fully acknowledge that. And then you look at the goals and saying where we're at, this is where we want to be. And then you bring an update to them. Instead of asking them to provide information, you're providing it to them. So flip the script. But then you can also say, I'm bringing you solutions. If we have a clear message on this is the direction we're going, people can focus on their work. People can continue to work instead of get back to work. That implies that we all haven't been working. But if we clarify and we know, it gives people certainty. It gives them confidence, knowing where we're going, that we are looking at the future, and lets them let go of that anxiety and focus on their work. If they're holding on to that anxiety, they're half working. They're worried. They're worried about, are we going to survive this? How are we doing? What's our financial health? Did the PPP loan help? Where are we at with that? That takes that mental capacity that is taken away from their work, and they should see that as leaders. And if they don't, there are tons of research and articles to go pull. Check out Simon Sinek. He's great on that topic. But really looking at bringing them solutions. You're not asking them to do anything other than provide security from the leadership so that all your employees can have that steady, steadfast knowledge that you are moving in a good direction. Staying informed, engage in conversation, look for new opportunities that capitalize on our strengths. Is there a new differentiator emerging? I love that. Going back to that pizza oven to shield, face shield, that would be a brand new differentiator that you wouldn't know that you had. One of the CEOs in my group talked about that their clients are saying how adaptable and agile they were, and that has now set them above their competition, because a lot of their competition is having problems on projects and can't manage the work from home, but that they've been able to hit the ground running and nothing changed and business as usual from a productivity standpoint, and that is a new differentiator for them. Step 4, we want to prosper. This is when you get to put the first 3 steps into action. Prioritize self-care, encourage and uplift others, find ways to have fun, keep things lighthearted, and use this time for development. We're going to dive into these individually. So self-love, Nicole mentioned it, take walks, exercise. My family did not give up our Taekwondo. We continued even though it was virtual. We are back in our dojo, but wearing masks. So whatever that physical activity can be. Your workspace. Workspace is huge for self-care. Are you stuck in a hole that is cluttered, or have you made a space for yourself? When we went on quarantine, I said, that's it. I'm buying a stand-up desk. I've got to be able to get in and out of the room and be able to stand during presentations, because that's a big part of who I am as a presenter, is to talk and be able to move in my space. So I bought a standing desk. What is that workspace for you? Looking at our next poll, talking about your workspace. What does that look like for you? Do you have a dedicated space that is perfectly set up? I have a spot, but it could improve. I don't have a specific workplace and I work wherever I can, whenever I can in workspace. What's that?
So Courtney, while we're waiting for everybody to fill out the poll, just like before I had my son and went on maternity leave, the company bought me a Microsoft Surface. I've always worked with a desktop. So now, even though I have a dedicated workspace at home, I love the Surface because like I can go anywhere. If like my husband's on the phone, it's too loud, or my son wants to play Play-Doh and I can work on the table. So just like the mobility of being able to move around is huge.
I love that. Thank you, Nicole. All right, we're at 85% participation. I'm going to end the poll and launch. Great. It looks like a lot of you are taking care of yourself and having a spot to work and making those improvements. I am big on keeping my office and my space clean. Now, as we move, it becomes problematic because I had to pack up a lot. But at the end of every day, I make sure that my space is cleared and empty. If I have to shove it all in a box and hide it in a corner, fine. But for me, that allows me to wake up in the next morning and not dread coming in here, but rather look forward to it because the rest of the house is insane, but this is clean and organized. So definitely having that self-care is important. So think about, maybe jot down an idea for those that said you could improve your space. Take the time to do that improvement. Some examples of uplifting or encouraging those around you. I mentioned the surprise tips treats, the cards, Uber Eats gift cards have been a great hit. I've been doing that with some of my clients and saying, let's eat a meal together. Here's an Uber Eats gift card. Let me know if you want to do lunch, dinner, breakfast, what have you. And then just getting on the screen and literally eating and enjoying conversation like we're at a lunch or a normal meal together. Finding ways to have fun. We still celebrate as a team. Obviously, we've been remote all of our existence. We just celebrated 4 years, and so we had a party. I shipped everybody boxes of, there was champagne in there, pearl necklace, hats, kazoos, and their own favorite candies that they liked, or chips, or what have you. And everybody opened it on the team call where we were celebrating, and then we got to pop the champagne together. And that really does give you a sense of celebration and uplifting. Themed events. I know some of my clients are doing, okay, let's all dress up in 80s or dress up in whatever, because you can still do that over a video. Having trivia, like I mentioned, or those dance parties. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we are more personal now. Like I said, my kids are here. My husband actually took them away today so that I could get through this presentation. But we have brought work into our homes, literally, and have exposed ourselves to bringing a hybrid approach. But with that, we also are in an emotional state of civil unrest. I did do a whole series on Let's Talk Race with Danielle Gray in the month of June. Every Thursday, we had an hour-long discussion. We brought in guest speakers to talk about how our firms and our industry are dealing with race and inequality. So really looking at how is your firm addressing that with your employees? How are you communicating that externally? Are you acknowledging that we are in a very emotionally vulnerable state personally as a society? Really understanding that not only are we dealing with a global pandemic and some of us are going stir crazy from being quarantined, but now we have this extra layer or added layer of the race discussion. Now, I think it's a vital discussion and it's one we should have been having and needs to continue. I'm going to drop the Let's Talk Race link in to the chat window here in a moment. And then if you guys want to check that out, feel free. There's a ton of resources for both you personally and professionally. Really, it's about communication, communicating your stance to your employees and to your clients. Are there examples that you guys want to share about how you've been keeping it lighthearted, fun, or encouraging those around you, or having self-care?
So Courtney, while we're waiting for people to chime in, FlowTech, we've stopped doing it now because it's technically our summer months and everybody's on vacation on and off. But from the start of the pandemic through the end of June, we did an every other week happy hour. And the first couple happy hours were just like conversation based, like how are you getting through this? But then the other happy hours, I'd plan some sort of activity, whether it be trivia or Hollywood game night. And it was just a good way to keep in touch and have some laughs with some coworkers, other than us, like, you know, rapidly emailing each other and calling and like, where is that? What's going on? So it was a nice way to bond.
That is fantastic. I love that. And we do quarterly happy hours as well. We've also done scavenger hunts where I'll do okay, go find something that starts with the letter C. Go find something that's teal. And then everybody brings it back and we all show. And that's another way to, oh, I didn't realize you were into wood carving. You just brought a thing that you carved out of wood. Like, tell me about that. So that's another great example. I love that. So looking at communication, this is huge and leads us into our final poll. So looking at how has your firm communicated both internally and externally? So the first question is internally. Have they increased and remained at that level? Did they increase at the beginning, but now they've decreased or backed off? Have they stayed the same with internal communications? decreased at the beginning and since increased, or decreased and remained at that level. The second one is external communication. Same answer choices, but how are you doing with external communication? This is great. We have very little decrease going on, so that's fantastic. All right, I'm going to give it about 5 more seconds. All right, it looks like the winner is increased at the beginning and since decreased. Second being increased and remained. Stayed the same and decreased are tied, and then decreased at the beginning, but since increased is the lowest. For external communication, stayed the same, wins. 25% have increased or remained increased, and then tied for decreased at the end. So really looking at ways that you can increase your communication internally. We use a communication tool called Slack. Others use Teams or another built-in communication or IM situation. We use auto prompting. So on Mondays, we say, hey, everybody, how was your weekend? This initiates the conversation instead of that awkward person first sharing their exciting news about their weekend, but instead there's a prompt that has that conversation starter. On Wednesdays, there's a prompt that says, how is your week going? Now, sometimes we're all busy and all we do is send a picture of me stressed out working, or me doing a presentation like this, or we've got a lot of ours have kiddos. Danielle has a new puppy, so we just get a picture of the puppy update. On Fridays, we have a prompt that says, what do you have planned for the weekend? Using those communication tools really cuts down on the amount of emails. It drives me crazy how many emails I get, and my staff knows, never email me, always Slack me. Encouraging chatting or side conversations, because we're not in the hallway talking anymore. So we have a wellness channel and we read a book together every quarter. So we have book discussions and wellness channels of people on their bikes or out walking. Creating that positivity by kicking off meetings with a TED Talk, or I know Greg Gray does a song every morning and he shares those, or inspirational quotes. The other thing you can do is use meeting cards. So these meeting cards we use on our team to quickly communicate what's going on. This is one of my favorites. Enough, let's move on. But this is a clear, quick indicator of what might be going on your team, so that you can vote very quickly, and it's just visual. I've got a download for those that I can share with you so that you can get those download cards that you can print. I'll drop that into the window. The link is not working. Okay, I will get that for you momentarily. External communication. I love that Dacia Coffee is a PR consultant, and she said this is an opportunity to help our firms pivot, to stay optimistic, and to be aggressive in their marketing. So this is a marketing heyday. This is a captive audience, but we also know that people are getting emailed out, webinared out. So we want to be strategic about those efforts, to stay consistent, to recognize and understand that we have made business now more personal, to let our culture shine, and to be honest and transparent where we're at in this journey of understanding. Any open mic discussions on communication that you want to share, or examples? I know we are almost out of time, and the last thing is to review. So if anybody does have examples of communication, I want to make sure to give you that opportunity. While you share the communication tips and tricks in your chat window or Q&A, I just want to wrap it up with the 4 steps to get us to prospering, is to really accept where we're at, to continue to be positive, to think big picture, and then to just prosper and thrive. I want to thank today's sponsor again, Gilbane, and open it up to any questions if anybody has any. Nicole, do you have any questions before we wrap it up?
I was wondering if you could share my video. I was just gonna, do my closing.
Absolutely. Let me do that really quick.
So Courtney, I want to thank you. This was a really good presentation. And again, if anybody has any questions or any comments, please share them at this point. But thank you all for attending today. And like Courtney said, I don't think this is going anywhere. I mean, we're going to be working from home a lot more, and we're really going to have to figure out what the best way to keep ourselves from surviving and into prospering will be. We don't have any more upcoming programs scheduled for the remainder of the SMPS Connecticut year, but now is an excellent time to think about if you want to get involved on a committee and help shape our chapter going into next year. If you are interested in joining a committee, we have some open positions and tasks on our website, but you could also feel free to email me, or it's president@smpsconnecticut.org, or Alicia Washington, the incoming president. So I would like again to thank our annual sponsors and today's sponsor, Gilbane, and of course, Courtney. And Courtney, did you have anything else that you needed to say today?
No, not at all. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and definitely share all of the tips and tricks. I'm going to update the slides because there's a couple that I added this morning for the PDF needs to be updated. So I know Nicole will send that out along with the recording.
Yep, that's correct. This has been recorded, and we will be sharing access to the recording with the slides, and it will be coming in a post-event survey email for you. So be on the lookout for that either later this week or early next week. So thank you guys again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your summer.
Thank you.